Thank you, everyone. We're going to try to have this be as much of an interactive engagement as we can make it, partly because you all have lots of questions and you have different, you come from what I can tell from the roster, and we'll get you a chance to introduce yourselves here in a minute, come from different institutions and in different stages of implementing tobacco policy or looking at tobacco policy. So your questions will necessarily then reflect the different perspectives that you have to this subject. There is no one-size-fits-all kind of, there are a few basic bromides or general principles that will apply pretty much regardless of the environment, and I'll talk about that. But there are also an awful lot of unique things about each institution. So it's important that we be interactive and that you feel comfortable asking questions or making comments or even feeling free to disagree. Not a problem, because there are many different ways of accomplishing tobacco-free or smoke-free campus. A couple of sort of house cleaning things to start with. There's a tendency in the tobacco world for people, especially public health policy people, to kind of generalize and use the term tobacco-free and smoke-free interchangeably. And this is partly due to the fact that a lot of tobacco-free, a lot of people that are coming at tobacco-free started years ago in the anti-smoking or against smoking kind of initiatives. And so smoking is the dominant tobacco use in almost every environment that you would look at. So there's a natural tendency to look at tobacco policy as really meaning smoking. So does tobacco-free campus mean smoke-free campus? Well, obviously any tobacco-free campus is smoke-free because smoking is a tobacco, or smoking tobacco products would constitute tobacco use. But not all smoke-free campuses are tobacco-free because that eliminates consideration of smokeless tobacco, which is becoming a significant problem and will be a much more significant problem in the years to come. That's the direction the American tobacco industry is headed, smokeless tobacco. So we're going to talk about the two, and your institution may be much more interested in smoking policy or no smoking or smoke-free campus policy than it is tobacco-free campus policy, and that's all right. But what I'd like for you to think about is, do you want to go through the process of making your institution, quote, smoke-free, only to then come back 5, 6 years down the road and have to go through the process again to deal with smokeless tobacco? So I think that's one bit of background information about this topic that is worth taking a moment to clarify. But when I refer to the two, I'll try to keep them separate. When I say tobacco-free, I'm referring to campuses that prohibit smoking and also campuses that prohibit smokeless tobacco use. A little bit about myself, my background, and Molly hit the keynotes, but my background is student affairs. I'm not a public health policy person. When the president of my institution, Ozarks Technical Community College in Springfield, Missouri, asked me in 1997 to look into getting tobacco off the campus, I didn't know where to start because I had no background. I had just managed to finally quit smoking 5 years before that. I was a former smoker. I was a dean of students by background. And it was immediately a vexing matter to think, well, how would we do that? So I said, okay, I'll be, naturally when the president tells you to do something, you do it to the best of your ability. That was before I knew about the internet. The internet may have existed, but I didn't know anything about it. So I had to start contacting my colleagues around the country. Colleagues like Ron Shade. Ron and I saw each other for the first time since how many years ago when you were at St. Charles Community College? 13. Yeah, 13, 14 years ago. Dr. Shade was the Chief Student Affairs Officer at St. Charles Community College outside of St. Louis, Missouri, a wonderful community college. And they became the second institution in the state of Missouri to make their campuses tobacco-free. But it was after Ron left them that happened. But it's the first time we had run into each other, so I didn't know Ron was in Washington. I'd lost track of him since he left St. Charles, and so it's great to see you again, Ron. But in any case, the president in '97, Norman Meyer, said, Ty, look into getting tobacco off the campus. And I started the process of calling people around, like Ron, and asking them, is your campus tobacco-free? And sometimes I would have people say, yeah, it's tobacco-free. And I'd say, well, tell me what your policy is. And, well, we prohibit smoking in our buildings. And I'd say, no, well, that's not what I'm really talking about. How about out on the campus, per se? So we would have that conversation. And eventually it would become clear that, no, their campus was not tobacco-free. They had restrictions. They were attempting to move smokers away, primarily smokers away from entrances and exits. And they had some designated areas, policies, some of them did. But none of them that I could find anywhere in the country had completely tobacco-free campus policy, meaning no tobacco use anywhere on the campus, or completely smoke-free campus policies. I could not find anyone in the country. My last ditch effort was I discovered that Utah had the most progressive Clean Air Act, and this is, by this time it was 98. It was the spring of 98. I discovered that fact, and I knew a little bit about Mormonism and enough to know that there were strong tenets against tobacco use in the Mormon faith. So I thought, okay, Utah, very progressive about open air policies regarding tobacco. Mormon institution, strictures against tobacco use. Hello, here's my final. I can go to BYU, I can talk to them. I'm sure they have a really restrictive policy. No. 20 feet from the entrances and exits of their buildings, just like others might have been 25, 15. I've seen them out to 50. I don't know that I've seen any further than 50. I've seen institutions that have painted lines on the sidewalks at whatever distance from the door their policy is. And I've seen them cement tobacco receptacles at wherever the mark was, however many feet from the door, because of the problem of the smokers moving the receptacles back to the buildings and buildings and grounds moving them back out. Seen all those kinds of things happen, but in the conversations, I could not find anybody that had a completely tobacco-free campus. The other thing I learned was, almost without exception, they were all interested in how you could do that, and the prime interest was, we can't enforce our current policy, or we've given up enforcing our current policy. We gave up on it years ago. How in the world could you do that? How can you enforce a completely tobacco-free campus policy? So I went back to the president and I said, I've got good news and bad news. Typical president, he said to me, well, what's the bad news? And I said, the bad news is I can't find anyone that has a completely tobacco-free campus policy. And he said, well, so what's the good news? I said, the good news is, in my conversations, it's been evident that if we could figure out how to do that, how to make our campus completely tobacco-free, they would be a lot of them would beat a path to our doorway because there's a lot of interest in it. And I said, the key thing is enforcement. It's just virtually unanimous that they don't know how to get their policies enforced. They're usually relying, almost without exception, on a limited safety and security staff, under-resourced, to try to be the tobacco police, and after a while, and it doesn't take very long, those safety and security people with no more support than that from the administration stop, chasing down people who are violating the policy. And I suppose, and I would tell you this, any of us, no matter how ardent we are about tobacco policy, if we felt that our institution wasn't supportive of the policy any more than just having us run around and write tickets, we'd soon probably find other things to be concerned about enforcing.